Just 1 week before his death, former One Direction star Liam Payne was hit with a bombshell letter accusing him of sending unsolicited and wildly inappropriate images and videos to his ex-girlfriend Maya Henry and also her family. New details of this cease and desist letter revealed disturbing allegations against the pop star as investigators probe the circumstances surrounding his sudden passing in Buenos Aires. I'm going to speak with former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani to get to the bottom of this. Welcome to the Sidebar presented by Law&Crime. I'm Matt Murphy, covering for Jesse Weber. As authorities continue to investigate the sudden and tragic passing of former One Direction star Liam Payne, the singer is making headlines again, but this time for sinister allegations that have emerged in a bombshell cease and desist letter. Before we get to that letter, just to catch you up to speed on this case, Argentine authorities have officially charged 3 individuals in connection with the singer's death. A hotel employee who's been accused of supplying drugs to the singer, a friend who is accused of abandoning Payne, and an alleged drug dealer. We don't know the identity of the alleged dealer, but we do know both the hotel employee, Brian Pais, and the friend, Roger Norris, deny the accusations against them. Payne's death still remains under investigation. Authorities have since ruled out suicide, suggesting Payne, who had been acting erratically in the hours leading up to his death, was likely unconscious when he fell from a third-floor balcony at the Casa Sur Palermo Hotel in Buenos Aires on October 16th. A toxicology report confirmed that he had a whole slew of drugs in his system, including a substance referred to as pink cocaine, a mixture usually of ketamine, illegal substances such as meth, MDMA, or opiates. Witnesses recalled seeing the troubled singer in a state of distress in the hours leading up to his death, and one alarming incident involving Payne allegedly smashing a laptop in the hotel lobby after receiving a troubling email. What was in that message and whether it's related to his death remains unclear. So back to this letter, a copy of it, which was obtained by Page 6, alleges the former pop star sent unsolicited, disturbing photos and videos of himself to his ex-girlfriend Maya Henry and her family members. The letter was sent by Henry's attorneys on October 9th, just days before Payne's tragic and untimely death, and its contents are explicit. Henry accused the former pop star of repeatedly bombarding her with sexually explicit images of himself, including disturbing images of his genitals and videos of him performing graphic sexual acts. The chilling accusations also allege that Payne had been trying to distribute intimate and explicit material of Henry to third parties, including her own family members. Before we go any further, I want to bring on a special guest to help me break all of this down, former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Matt.
So I want to get your initial thoughts on these allegations. What do you make initially of these accusations that he sent graphic content to his ex-girlfriend? Let's start with that.
Well, that's serious, but certainly not as serious as the images of Maya herself. That can be harassing, sending pictures of your genitalia or a person participating in sex acts on themselves. But again, it certainly becomes much more serious when you're circulating and distributing images and videos of other people.
Okay, so in that case, now we're talking big-time federal prosecutions in the United States. It's known as revenge porn, right? Give our viewers a little bit of background on that. What exactly is that, and what are the potential penalties for something like that?
Well, there are new laws related to revenge porn, and they've been enacted in many states. And essentially, if there is an explicit video or an image, and there's an intention for that to remain private between 2 individuals, often in some sort of relationship, and then one of those people decides to distribute it to others, well, that's revenge porn. And the reason it's called revenge porn is oftentimes when people break up and the relationship ends, they'll take revenge and release those images to third parties that really had nothing to do with the sexual contact.
So you've got potential state criminal liability for that, potential federal criminal liability for that, and also potential civil liability. Now, your background as a former federal prosecutor, it's kind of funny. Our careers are sort of parallel. I was a DA doing criminal cases, and now I'm doing some civil. And it's my understanding you do quite a bit of civil in our home state of California. So what are some of the things that, a especially somebody with assets, which Liam Payne appeared to have. He had properties all over the world. In addition to the criminal penalties, what can happen to him civilly?
Well, certainly now that he's passed, he can't be prosecuted. You can't prosecute a dead person, but his estate may have to pay for any civil judgment. And like you, Matt, I'm a former federal prosecutor, a former prosecutor now doing civil plaintiffs work, and you can be sued for revenge porn. And if someone passes away, even though the criminal case goes away, their estate can still be sued, and that judgment would be like any other creditor against the estate. So if there's assets, and Liam Payne probably does have assets, he may have to pay a civil judgment if Maya's and her lawyers decide to move forward against his estate.
Hey, I'm going to jump in here real quick. Matt's doing a fantastic job, but I wanted to just highlight our sponsor who helped make this episode possible, Upside. Now, Upside's awesome. It is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, food. This is real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you can then transfer right into your bank account. I mean, look here. I used Upside when I went to dig for lunch, which delightful, by the way. Claimed an offer on the app, paid with my credit card, followed the steps on the app, got cash back. So easy. I got 20% cash back for that. And you can use it at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores, gas stations. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. And make sure to use our promo code Sidebar and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. All right, back to Matt.
So we know around the time of his death, the pop star was struggling with substance abuse issues, and we even saw evidence uncovered from his hotel room of the various drug paraphernalia. Drugs and breakups. This is something that you've probably encountered many times. It's almost a chicken or egg thing, right? You got somebody who's either experiencing drug problems and is going off the rails, so their partner, wife, husband, whatever, can't deal with them anymore. And sometimes you have somebody that turns to drugs or alcohol to deal with the heartache of that. What sort of things have you seen over the course of your career, situations like that, and how bad can that go?
It can go very bad. Obviously, we've seen people die of drug overdoses. We've seen people with mental health problems or different rough patches in their life. And certainly we know that a divorce or a breakup can be one of the most challenging things for anyone to go through. I mean, there's studies that show it's really up there with the death of a family member or a friend. So I have seen people turn to drug use. And I mean, you touched upon it, Matt, the suicide. Really the kind of question is, from a legal perspective, is does that break the sort of chain of causation? Obviously, we know that distributing drugs is unlawful, and it's unlawful in pretty much every country. And then most countries, including the United States, if there's a drug that's distributed that causes death, there's increased penalties. And so certainly I expect that to be the case in Argentina. The question is, though, was this a drug deal that resulted in a suicide that may break the chain of causation, or, as prosecutors are alleging, because of the drugs, the pink cocaine, the 2C, Payne did not have the sense, either he lost consciousness or was unable to prevent himself from falling off that balcony, in which case it would not break that chain of causation and the dealers would be responsible for his death.
So this is one of the things that I'm sure jumped out at you like it did to me. You're talking about a potential homicide investigation, right? So the police come in. When you have a fall like this, it seems like they ruled out suicide really quickly. And I hope this was an accident, because this is just a horribly tragic case. But what's going on in somebody's head, especially in a fall? It's not like a self-inflicted gunshot wound or somebody that hangs himself. This is there appears to be a lot of gray area there, right?
No question. Obviously, if you have video, that tends to be the best evidence. If not, you're relying on the testimony of the witnesses who are there, who are still alive. And like you said, Matt, it's really one of three things: suicide, an accident, or homicide, murder, right? So he was pushed. So that's the first thing that law enforcement needs to figure out, which one of the three that it is.
Yeah, it's interesting, because in the beginning phases of any homicide investigation, there's so much to do. You've got to get into the computers, you got to figure out, who they were speaking to, you got to interview all those witnesses. I don't know. They seem pretty sure of it, so maybe this is something on video that we just haven't seen yet. But sure is interesting. Now, I mentioned that there was a cease and desist letter legally, can you give us a brief breakdown on what is that so our viewers can understand it?
A lawyer will often send a letter to an individual or his or her lawyer and put them on notice that what they're doing is unlawful. Oftentimes, you want the unlawful conduct to stop, which in this case was the revenge porn, the harassing images and videos that were being sent. But if the person doesn't comply, that helps really provide that notice and can really bump up those damages in a civil case, because obviously in a lawsuit, you need to establish liability, the fault that something unlawful was done, but also the damages. And if someone is knowingly and intentionally doing something, that may be a basis not just for compensatory damages to make you whole, but punitive damages to punish that person.
So in this case, I mean, it's very interesting. Even though he has died seemingly in this tragic incident, his estate is not off the hook. Fair to say?
Not at all. Not at all. They have assets, and they got to pay out any liabilities, and a civil judgment is one of those liabilities.
So let's talk a little bit more about the details of what is contained in this letter. There's another woman mentioned here that Payne was reportedly in contact with. This woman claimed that Payne contacted her on social media through multiple mediums, including iCloud, Snapchat, and others, and had offered to send her explicit pictures. She apparently sent a direct Instagram message to Payne's ex-girlfriend, Maya Henry, on October 6th. Page 6 reviewed this DM in which the unnamed woman alleged, quote, "The main reason I reached out is because he started blowing up my phone very recently on an iCloud email, and when I asked who it was, he started asking me if I wanted nudes of you, his current girlfriend." The current girlfriend is presumably Kate Cassidy, who was reportedly with Payne in Argentina before his passing. This unnamed woman claims she knew the pop star for years when Payne allegedly contacted her, saying she was horrified by his messages, she rejected his request, but apparently this did not put a stop to the inappropriate communications. Payne instead allegedly chose to respond with chilling comments about his ex-girlfriends. One message he allegedly sent to the woman read, quote, "Send me effing vids. Did I ever send you ones of Maya or any of my exes?" But there's even more. According to this woman, Payne continued to harass her, as she alleged in her direct message to Henry. Quote, "I stopped answering him for a while, and he messaged me on an iCloud account, a few different phone numbers, as well as a Snapchat account." Now, this cease and desist letter that Maya Henry sent contained a very serious warning to Payne. If he did not cease these alleged actions, Henry was going to pursue both criminal and civil cases against him. So this raises another, forgive me for being kind of nerdy and legal here. We've got a citizen of the UK who owned property in California for a time. He was renting a home in Florida. He also had property in the UK and tragically dies in Argentina, all while using social media to contact different women who also appear to live in various places. Give us the basics, Neama, on jurisdiction on something like this. This seems to be kind of a jumbled mess. So it's my understanding that Ms. Henry's lawyers are actually based in Texas. So how can a Texas court have any sort of jurisdiction over a guy who's doing things in, apparently, Argentina?
It's challenging to have jurisdiction over someone who is out of the country. Now, if the crime is committed in Texas, then a Texas judge can issue an arrest warrant. And sometimes countries will honor those arrest warrants and extradite individuals from other countries to the United States to stand trial. There's extradition treaties. I'm not saying that this particular case rises to that level, but if Liam Payne were to come back to the United States, any other state within the United States would have to honor that arrest warrant and extradite him from Florida or New York or California or wherever to Texas to stand trial because of the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution.
Okay, so he can be theoretically violating criminal statutes, both federally and potentially in these various states, and also be subject to essentially getting sued in any one of these places as well, depending on the circumstances, I guess. Fair to say?
Yes, that's very fair to say. And this is one of those areas where the law is starting to catch up with technology. And this is obviously something that's relatively new that's taken place over the past 5 to 10 years.
So a woman who's getting these types of text messages or receiving these images, if she's in Texas or Florida or California or anywhere in the United States, theoretically, that's all it would take for jurisdiction to attach and for that court to be able to assert itself over Mr. Payne. Do I have that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The letter also mentions what are known as punitive damages. Give us a quick tutorial on that, if you would.
So there's different types of damages under the law, and we touched upon this. Generally speaking, the law is intended to make someone whole. So if someone suffers pain and suffering, emotional distress, they have medical bills to pay. Those damages, compensatory damages, are there to make them whole, as if the harm never happened. But if the conduct is intentional, the law does also allow for punitive damages, or if it's malicious or really grossly negligent. And in this particular case, if Payne is doing something intentionally, knowing that it violates the law, knowing that it's harming the victim, the judge may allow the jury to consider punitive damages to punish that individual.
Okay, so he's reportedly grappling with these legal issues in the days leading up to his death, and sources close to the star revealed that he was extremely overwhelmed. Henry had also recently gone public about the legal dispute that was simmering between the two ever since their highly publicized breakup in April of 2022. The two were previously engaged, but broke it off amidst allegations that Payne had been cheating on Henry. In a TikTok video shared earlier this month, Henry revealed the troubling extent of the singer's attempts to contact her after their split, saying, quote, "Ever since we broke up, he's been messaging me nonstop, blowing up my phone. I never know where it's going to come from. Every time I see one pop up on my phone, I'm like, here we go again." Henry also claimed in an interview with the Internet is Dead podcast on October 14th that Payne would allegedly use his addiction issues to try to manipulate her, saying, quote, "He would always play with death and be like, well, I'm going to die. I'm not doing well." Which brings us back to this idea of this young, he's only 31 years old. He's dealt with this split. We've got apparently copious drug use. You've got potential legal problems hanging over his head. He's been threatened with punitive damages, which in theory could lead to him suffering awards for his property and the money that he made in this band that he sang in for so long. In your experience, when you're talking about somebody that is suffering from all of this sort of thing, what do you think? Any chance that the police in Argentina may rethink that suicide call?
They may, and you're right, Matt. This is a lot. You're talking about some of the mental health issues, substance abuse issues, dealing with a breakup, getting a letter from a lawyer, a cease and desist on top of it, threatening all sorts of damages. So I'm sure Liam Payne wasn't in the best headspace. So you would think that law enforcement would, spend the time to rule out the possibility of suicide.
Yeah, and I guess also, somebody that is in the public eye like this, whose living depends on not only their musical talent, but fans supporting them. And this is One Direction, right? So the fan base is overwhelmingly young women. And I guess to hear the public allegations against him, that's the type of thing that could have a seriously negative impact on his career as well. So, I mean, all of that, I guess, factors into the determination, or at least the investigators trying to sort this whole thing out. So it'll be interesting to see where it all goes.
That's right. Yeah, there's not just the courtroom, there's the court of public opinion, and that can definitely affect folks and how they deal with different stressors.
Yeah. So what do you think, Neama? Anything else on this one that jumps out at you that we should be talking about?
No, I think we covered everything. What's really interesting is, the pink cocaine, the 2C, what effect it had on Payne, whether it was an accident, and really that criminal abandonment. I'm interested to see how that goes because, again, that's not something that we see here in the States.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would want to be in Argentina in a civil system facing judges for that, especially if I'm, growing up in California, going there, and I mean, I'd never even heard of that crime before this case before. So it's, that would be, that could be a real tough situation for that guy to be in. And if they are really close friends, he would be dealing with the criminal charges in addition, of course, to the grief that he must be going through due to the death of Liam Payne. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been fascinating for me, and I hope we get to do it again.
Yes, looking forward to it. Thanks, Matt.
That's all the time we have here on this episode of Sidebar. Thanks for being with us, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Matt Murphy, and I'll speak to you next time.